We are blessed. One of my friends is going to speak for us. He is soon going to be a missionary in Cameroon, Africa. We learned more about that during our family devotion time and a little bit in our first service. He is a graduate of Mid-Atlantic Christian University, has been married to his wife J.L., who is now in Illinois finishing up some school. He might say something about that. It's not because she doesn't like him, but they've been married for 7 years, and so they're going to be going to the mission field together. But he's been in youth ministry in North Carolina and in Illinois, and so we're looking forward to him coming. He's gone on some mission trips. He's been to Ghana, and he'll talk about that, Ghana. And he told me, I said, listen, man, here's kind of the times when we try to do stuff and all this. He said, well, in Ghana, he said, they don't want to listen to you unless you preach an hour or so. I said, hey, brother, you're not in Ghana. And and there you have it. So anyway, but this is my friend. He's from Wilson, North Carolina, the Stony Brook Christian Church. Brian Harris. Come on up and preach for us.
Good morning. Good morning. Excited to be here. Excited. I was in Illinois for 4 years, and it does feel back. It feels good to be back on the East Coast. There's a lot of familiarity about this place. My wife is in Illinois right now. She's finished. She's got one class left to finish to be an RN, which is going to help us while we're in Cameroon doing some missions there. She's going to open up some wound clinics and things like that. So, I do miss her greatly. I really realize how blessed I am to have a wife like her. She tells me that I'm the best person she knows. How often can you hear that, right? It's amazing, right? I'm like, man, you don't know many people. That's cool. But I do miss her greatly. I'll get to see her probably in February and then in March, and then I probably won't see her until May. So it's kind of, my heart is kind of hurt. This is the first church I've been to preach at that she hasn't been with me. So, I miss her for that as well. A couple of things about me. One is I've always liked sports. Not necessarily watching, but always liked playing. Like if I saw football on TV, I would go outside and throw a football. Or kick it in the air and catch it, like myself. Like I was that kid that kicked the football and ran after it himself. And so I always enjoyed playing sports, but recently, I'm 29 years old, and I know some of you are like, he's so young, whatever, but in my 29 years of age, I've obviously done something wrong, because my joints have aged to the ability of an 80-year-old. They've all given up on me, every one of them. When I turned 27, people are always like, how do you feel? You're 27, how do you feel? When I turned 27, I woke up and my knees hurt. I just woke up and my knees hurt when I was 27. It was horrible. I played a lot of soccer growing up, and I was playing, when I first moved to Illinois, I was playing like this little, you just go and play, like pickup. I don't know what you call it, just pickup, not league really, just kind of go and playing. And I'm dribbling past this high school kid, and he didn't like that I dribbled by him. So he turned around and karate kicked me in the side of the knee, tore my ACL. Awesome, right? Drilled by this high school kid and tore my ACL. So after I beat him up, I got up, I walked home, whatever. Trying to figure out what's wrong with my leg. We finally figured out my ACL's torn. I'm scheduled to have surgery for this, right? Now, like I told you, my joints have given up on me. And so my friend asked me at the church to join the polar plunge. Who knows what the polar plunge is? Right, know what the polar plunge is? So most of you, a lot of you. Some of you are embarrassed, what it is, I guess. And so I go to do the polar plunge, and it's like 45 degrees in February. It's in Illinois. It is cold. And I go to run into, I had $50 donated for me, or so I don't remember how much was donated for me. And I run in, touch the guy's hand. I fulfilled my part of the obligation that is all I'm required to do. Run in 20 foot, touch this guy's hand, and run back, right? But on the way back, I'm like, I would really like to get the full experience of this. I don't want to be the guy that just only did it halfway. I want to do the full part of this. So on my way back, I do like a little shallow water dive. Get completely in this 45 degrees water. Come out, right shoulder dropped 2 inches. Dislocated my shoulder. Like my joints are so fragile that water dislocates my joints. Like how bad? Water's doesn't have any resistance. It's like nothing. Like part of the definition of water is like jelly. You see somebody's got a backbone of a jellyfish. It means they don't. Water's weaker than jelly. And my joint dislocates. I run back, and I've got a hurt knee because this is torn ACL. And now I've got my shoulder. I'm trying to knock it back in place. I look like a wounded bird. And I eventually make it into the bathroom, and I pull my shirt off, and I'm looking like, oh, this doesn't look good. But I know enough not to ask leading questions. They teach you this. You don't ask leading questions because people are going to follow you. Like, does my arm? If I would have said, does my arm look dislocated? They'd be like, is dislocated. You know, that's what happens. So I just turn to the guy beside me, I say, does anything look wrong with me? And he says, dude, your arm's dislocated. I'm like, all right, good. I mean, not good, but that's what I thought it was. And I was like, what do I do? So I went to the ambulance, they put me on morphine. They said if they gave me any more, I would die, but it didn't do me any good. It didn't do anything to the pain. Eventually, after 2 hours of waiting in the hospital, he cried. I didn't cry to him, man. But in the hospital, the doctor finally put towels around my arm, towels around my body. We had 3 nurses on one side, a doctor, a nurse on the other. Foot in my armpit, pulled my joint back in place. That's not where the story ends. So I'm a youth minister, right? I've been a youth minister I was youth minister, I guess, about 7 or 8 years at a time. And we're doing like a VBS before like the older kids, so we can't call it VBS because they won't go to that, so we call it The Edge, because this seems cooler. And so we've got like 40, 50 kids going to this thing. We went to a place called Castle Park. And Castle Park's like a very elaborate place. There's like hidden tunnels and passages and stuff. So while we're going, some of the youth are in the LARPing. Who knows what that is? LARPing, did I pronounce it right? The foam swords and shields? It's called LARPing? Nobody knows? And it's cool that you guys don't know. I mean, you aren't nerds. And so we got these foam swords and shields and we're fighting. And this one kid does an aerial attack. And so I hold up my foam shield, and the pressure of a foam sword on the foam shield knocks my shoulder back out. It's like complete tunnel vision. I'm like, ah! And the guy, one of the sponsors grabbed my arm and got it back in. But that's not all either. So I finally get, so because of my shoulder injury, I'm not able to have knee surgery in that 2-week period. So they had to postpone my knee surgery because I have to have crutches. Shoulder has to be strong enough to handle crutches. So now, like a month goes by, I have shoulder surgery, knee surgery, then 6 months later, I have a shoulder surgery. Seems like all is well. I play on this indoor traveling league. We're like traveling to Kentucky, Missouri, Indiana. I'm traveling all these different states playing indoor soccer. League's over. I'm in amazing shape. I've been doing Insanity in great shape, right? We go play on this like fun international tournament. And so it's just like all the Saudi Arabians make a team, the Africans all make a team. I know one's a continent, I'm not confused, but anyway, all the Africans make a team, the Chinese have a team, and it's just kind of like the way the tournament works. And so I'm on like a random group of all the different students. And I'm playing and I'm coming one-on-one to a girl. And I'm like, I'm going to destroy this girl, I'm going to go, it's going to be amazing. And I go to cut, bam, ACL gives out on me. Like, don't even touch her. The worst part is she stole the ball. And I'm on the ground. I'm in a lot of pain to get me off. And so I finally had that ACL surgery. I'm about 7, 8 months out of that. And so, I've always kind of given up on me a little bit. I really love sports, but I'm starting to feel that I'm getting to the age where I'm just not quite as adequate to play like I used to. Have any of you ever felt that? Has anything ever come that you just don't feel like you can do what you used to do? Has that happened before? Everybody, good. At least everybody can relate to this. Feeling inadequate really can do a lot of things for us. I mean, it really can hinder us in a lot of ways. When I was in college, I worked construction. And I'll tell you, it's my trick for the day. And impressed. Early I did that on the tile, and I was like, if I drop it on the tile, he's going to kick me out. And so I'm glad I didn't do that. So I worked construction in college, and I worked with a guy named Joey Steins. Does anybody know Joey Steins? His dad is Homer Steins, works over at Sunrise Church of Christ down in Hill Devil Hills. And so I worked with Joey Steins through college. And Joey had a partner. His name was Robert. Does anybody know Robert? Good, because I'm going to talk about him. And so Robert, we called him Big Bird because he was big and simple-minded like a bird. And so Robert was a big guy, kind of rough around the edges, a little difficult to get along with. And I saw somebody shaking his head back there. Hey, don't tell Robert I said that. All right? All right. Just tell him. My name is Brad. And so anyway, I'm working construction. Robert's the first day on the job with Robert. And he's looking at me and he's like, Brian, I want you to frame this up. I want you to level this, get everything set up. We're going to frame the inside of this bathroom. And he's walking by and he's just kind of like watching us do it. He's like, now Brian, you can't do 1,000 hits to knock this in. It's going to knock everything out of whack. You're going to have to remeasure and re-level everything. So you're going to really knock the nail in a couple of hits, all right? And so I'm over there and he's kind of glaring down, a little nervous, got my boss, a brand new boss looking at me. So I'm like, settled in. And the first thing I do is he looks at me and he says, Brian, a real carpenter settles a nail in one swing. That feels a little demeaning, right?
I'm like, Robert, thanks, Robert. It tells you to be a good working environment. I'm not a real carpenter, obviously. Thank you. Thank you.
You're going to love this job. And so then I go to hit the nail, and it goes in crooked. And so, and it goes in crooked. And so, what do we do in these situations, right? A little nervous.
There must be a knot in the wood.
You can't see the knot. See, a knot's when a branch is going to be formed and makes it really hard. And it was going to be a branch. It just hasn't made that decision yet before they cut it down. But it's a really hard wood. You would have done it too. It would have been like that. So I go to straighten it out, and I'm trying to straighten it. He's like, Brian, no. Just redo it, remeasure everything, re-level everything. And so, I got everything remeasured, re-leveled. He's still walking. The whole time he's not helping me because he has an 80-pound bag of concrete on his shoulder. And he's instructing me, glaring down, watching. He's all right, Brian. All right, so I'm going to do it again. So I'm like, all right, one time. Damn, just like a real carpenter. How do you like that? Then it shoots across the room. And he looks at me and he says, Brian, why do we pay you? You feel real good after that kind of response. He's like, Brian, grab the nail. And with the bag concrete on his shoulder, he says, give me the hammer. Takes the hammer. With one swing, settles the nail. Second swing, completely drives it down. And then he says, that's how a real carpenter does it. Have you guys ever felt that inadequate? It would be surprising if anybody else has had as bad of an experience as I have. Does anybody? But we can all at least relate to feeling inadequate to doing something, right? Inadequacy can prevent us from doing a lot of things. It prevents us from applying for certain jobs, prevents us from trying for certain things. There's a couple areas in life that just simply, it can't stop us from doing. Like one would be like moving out. Like some, I think, high schoolers, teenagers, maybe when they graduate, they don't necessarily feel like they're adequate to live on their own. They don't really feel like they're adequate to pay their own bills, to cook their own meals, to do their own laundry, to support themselves. The stairs that make them want to live home maybe a little bit longer. But, that can't prevent us. Eventually you just have to get in the world. Otherwise we'd all be living with our parents. Maybe that is happening in some places. Another area is in the area of having kids. I don't know any mother that has said, oh, I was ready for kids. When they came out, I knew I could give them everything they needed. I could always satisfy all of their needs. They would never cry around me. Has any mother ever said that? Yeah, and but just because we don't necessarily feel adequate to be parents doesn't mean we can't be parents and do the best job we can do, right? Another area where all people often feel inadequate is in serving God. We look at God as being holy, creator, all righteous. And we think, what am I, as a sinful person, going to do? How am I going to be able to serve God? Adequacy or feeling inadequate can certainly hinder us in our ability to do God's work. Now here's the good news, is God has a pattern of using inadequate people to do His will. If you look throughout history, throughout the Scriptures, everybody, almost everybody, if not everybody, has got some characteristics, some traits, something that we would look at him and say, this person's inadequate for God to use. God can't use them. We're going to be in Hebrews 11 just a little bit if you guys would like to turn there. Now, Hebrews 11 is called the Hall of Faith. That's kind of the nickname that's been given. The Hall of Faith. It's got all these great biblical characters, these great people we can look up to. We can read about and be encouraged. We're going to go through this a little bit, just kind of exploit some of their inadequacies. Make all of us feel a little better about ourselves. And so we're in chapter 11, verse 7. We're talking about Noah. It says, by faith Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. And we look at Noah, we're like, man, Noah's a great man of God. Great man. God's like, build this big boat out here, and you might look crazy. Everyone's going to think you're nuts, but just do it anyway. And Noah's like, yeah, Noah had faith. Yeah, Noah was amazing. He had faith to do this, even though he was going to get insults at that, and he was going to look retarded and stupid and everything. And he had the ability to do this, and he went and did it. And then as soon as Noah, the flood comes, Noah gets off the boat. What do we see? This awesome man of faith, we now see he's like passed out, drunk, naked, laying beside a fire. Like he's trying to start some kind of hippie commune with the new world of God. And so, we say, no, what are you doing? Or we get to Abraham, and we see in verse 8, it says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. And we're like, oh, man. Abraham's a man of faith. He's called father of faith. He's done so many great things. He's got so many awesome things that's been attributed to him. We call him father of the faith. Abraham's called to leave this land leave his family, leave everything, go to this other land, and he does it. What an amazing task. What we don't read about, at least in Hebrews, what we read about in Genesis, is Abraham takes his father and his nephew with him. And his father was known for worshiping the moon. And instead of going to Canaan, they go to Haran, which is known for idol worship and moon worship. And he spends several years prolonging the plan of God to be in this moon idol worship city. And then once his father dies, he eventually makes it out to Canaan. I mean, think of what could have been done if Abraham would have actually left when God told him to leave. What type of things would have changed? Maybe these famines that were in Genesis would have happened. I mean, there's all sorts of other chain of events that could have changed if he would have just listened to God when God told him to. Abraham deliberately disobeyed God. God said, leave your family and take my family with me. God said, get rid of idol worship. I'm going to live in a city that's more focused on idol worship. And yet God was able to use Abraham with all of his inadequacies to still be father of the faith, to still be somebody we can look up to, and to still be the patriarch that Jesus comes through. Amazing thing. God has a pattern of using inadequate people to do his will. One of the prophets I really like is Jonah. I think Jonah really it really does an excellent job of showing how inadequate people can be used. Because when God comes to Jonah, Jonah's like, I don't want to do it. You know, he's like going into no. And he turns away and runs away from God. And then you remember the story, eventually Jonah does go. But the idea is that God was able to use somebody who did not want to be used by God. God was able to use somebody who did not want to be used by God to bring off repentance in the city. If we want to be used by God, certainly we're adequate. If we want to be used by God, certainly. If He can use somebody that doesn't want to be used, certainly He can use us. We look at some of the other people. We see Sarah, the wife of Abraham. She laughs at God. God's going to give you sons. She's like, ha ha, no you won't. And God still gives her a son. Like she laughs in God's face and God still uses her. We see Jacob as a cheater. Judah, who's going to be the leader of the tribe of Judah, who Jesus is going to come through, sells his brother into slavery. We see King David, who gets cut before the tryouts. I mean, like, I tried out for the basketball team in high school. Did anybody do this? Now, how about this? Who tried out for the basketball team in high school as a senior for the first time and they were garbage? That was me. I was that good. I mean, I couldn't have made the 6th grade basketball team. I mean, I was bad. And so we're in this tryouts, and they're naming all these things like Flash, hey, whatever. I don't know what any of it means. So I'm just standing there looking like a goon. And eventually, we're doing this like weave and play. And I know what that is because I played soccer. So I'm just kind of following, doing what we do in soccer. And this guy gives me a really bad pass. Horrible. And I dive against the ball. Like I'm parallel with the ground, like 4 feet off the ground, looking like an all-star. Grab the ball, throw it to the guy in the center to do an alley-oop, puts it in. Looks amazing. My thought is, I'm definitely on this team. You can't see that and not keep it. He didn't even wait till the end of the day. And he walked in and he was like, Brian, just go home. Just go home. Like tryouts was like a 2-week process and then you get cut. I got cut like mid-first day. And so David, Samuel walks up to, King Saul is doing bad in his king. Samuel walks up to Jesse, David's father, and says, hey, get all your kids out, I think I want them to be king. And Jesse's like, hey, all my kids come in, except you, David, you stay out there, you stay with the sheep, you're worthless. Like his own dad cut him. His own dad didn't believe in him. And yet God was able to use David to be a great king. And then even as David is a great king, what do we see? We see him given into adultery and into murder. And then he has a son, Solomon. And Solomon gives into idolatry and adultery. And all these people that seem so great have all these inadequacies that we would look at and say, you can't be used by God, but God still used him. He uses those who we think are unpickable. And we see Moses bring the 10 Commandments. Except he didn't do this until he was 80 years old and has speech impediment. And then he was able to use Moses. But Moses wasn't so prideful and Moses was a little more humble. We look in James chapter 5, verse 17, it says that Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. Elijah was a man with a nature like ours. But I think we think back like, no, Elijah was a lot cooler than we are. I mean, Elijah was amazing, right? Everybody agree Elijah was pretty amazing? When we see the 2 altars, and there's the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, And they're all praying around their altar, like asking for their God to do their work. And Elijah's over there kind of taunting them, like laughing, like maybe your God's asleep, maybe he's in the restroom, maybe he's not available. And then eventually Elijah says this prayer. God ignites the altar, shows that he is real. Elijah, his lone spokesman, standing in front of thousands of people that don't believe in God, proving that God is real. We're like, man, Elijah is amazing. What a man of faith. He would love to characterize our life around. Let's follow his pattern. But the very next verse, Elijah gets threatened by like a chick and runs away, like a girl threatens to kill him and he flees. Like, when does a guy run from a girl? Unless it's the overcommitted girlfriend, right? Like, other than that, guys don't run from girls. It's just not what they do. And so Elijah flees. And yet God's able to use Elijah. And we haven't even hit the New Testament yet. You go, the last prophet of the Old Testament, Nehemiah, or one of the last prophets, what are his attributes? What made him so great to serve God? He was literally the bartender of the king. And yet God used him to get the wall built and to make Israel a nation again. God used people that are inadequate. Look at the New Testament and we see that it was spread. The good news of Jesus was spread through thieves and sailors, uneducated, rough men, and the legalists that had literally everything wrong until Jesus opened his eyes. Paul talks about himself in 1 Corinthians as being of not being an elegant speaker. And he talks of himself in 2 Corinthians 10 that he seemed meek and insignificant in person. And so God used this meek, insignificant, bad preacher to do the majority of the missions work in the New Testament. I mean, if it wasn't for Paul and God using Paul, this bad, insignificant speaker, we would not know Christ today. Or very likely that we didn't. That's the kind of person God was able to use. And it doesn't stop there. Timothy had stomach issues. Epaphroditus almost died. Mark wasn't able to handle the work and quit for a while. Simon did witchcraft. Peter was scared. Thomas doubted after seeing miracle after miracle. Do I really need to go any further? The people God used throughout history were inadequate. And so are we. And God was able to use them, and God can use us. Now, the Old Testament, the main purpose, the main way God used people was by bringing a means for a son to come into the world. And so he's kind of setting the stage for that. So he has the Ten Commandments, and everybody can look at the Ten Commandments and say, all right, I'm sinful. I've done these things. I've broken God's commandments. I need help. And then he instilled animal sacrifices where they can have this animal given to the priest, and they put their hands on the animal, which is supposed to represent the sins leading them going on to the animal. Like, this animal is going to suffer what they deserve to suffer. So God paints the picture for them to understand what happens when we sin. There's punishment involved. And then he sends Jesus Christ to be our atoning Redeemer, a propitiation for our sins, meaning the wrathful offering. And so he's a propitiation for our sins. We see Jesus Christ. We've been redeemed. We have salvation. The question is, how does God use us under the New Testament? How are we used? And the question I'd like to ask is, what is the only thing that matters on the day of judgment? In order to understand what we need to do as Christians, we need to understand what is the only thing that matters at the end. The only thing, I'll tell you what doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what sports teams you cheer for. It doesn't matter what hobbies you have, what kind of degree you got in college, whether you live in a trailer or a big house, whether you're in shape or obese, if you're popular or socially awkward. It doesn't matter how many books you've read, trophies you had, if you were married, if you were single. It doesn't even matter how much of the Bible you've read. It doesn't matter whether you wear designer clothes or if you shop at Goodwill. The only thing that matters, literally the only thing that matters, is whether you and the people you come in contact with are going to heaven. That's the only thing that matters. Literally, nothing else matters. Who here thinks it's easy to be good at things? Like, we can practice something and be pretty good at it, right? Like, I could be an amazing crocheter. I don't even know how to crochet. But I can learn how to crochet and be amazing at it if I put some time and effort in it, right? Anybody agree they could be a good crocheter? My grandma did it, and I didn't see her with any other talents. Crochet. She was a great cook too. But I'm just saying, if she can crochet, I think anybody can crochet. And so, I also knew her as being old. So I'm sure when she was younger, she was an athlete. But as in her prime age, I knew her, she was an excellent crocheter. And this is all you do is this. And so, anyway, so I think crocheting is amazing, by the way. I'm not trying to insult you. I've got lots of crocheted blankets, all right? And they keep me warm at night. All right, there is a place. I love crocheters. Woo, go home. All right, so anyway, it's pretty easy to be good at things, though, right? I mean, we could be amazing Xboxers. We could be amazing at hunting. We just got to spend time and effort at it, right? Here's the thing. Sometimes what hinders us from being good at something is failure. We have the fear that we're going to fail, and our fear of failure will keep us from practicing and putting the effort we need to. But I'd like to know that fear of failure is not what should stop us from doing these other tasks. It's another fear. Our greatest fear should not be failure, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter. Tim Kaiser said that in a book called Serving Leftovers to God. Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at things in life that don't really matter. It doesn't matter if we're amazing crocheters or excellent cooks or excellent hunters or excellent Xboxers. None of that matters if our friends are going to hell. None of it matters. Literally, the only thing that matters is if us and the people that we come in contact with daily. Because when we talk about our neighbors, those are our neighbors. Anyone we come in contact with, we now have a responsibility to bring them to Christ. We have a large task and a lot of work, and we might be inadequate, but God can still use us to bring glory to Him and to His kingdom and to build up His kingdom. When Jesus, after He died on the cross, He comes back and He says these last words. You know, it's like He went up to heaven and decided to come all the way back down just to give us these last words. We probably should pay attention. In Matthew 28, He says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey all that I have commanded you, and surely I'm with you always till the end of the age." Pretty big challenge. Bring all nations. I mean, this is a large task. Who here's played Simon Says? Everybody should see everybody's hand. Don't be ashamed of Simon. So, you know, Simon Says, pat your head. What do you do? Simon Says, pat your head. All right, you pat your head. Simon Says, rub your belly. Rub your belly. Right? Okay, so that's how Simon Says. That's how the game works. Jesus says, make disciples of all nations. What do? We memorize it. Isn't that what we do? We just memorize the Scriptures. I mean, when has that ever been effective in reality? A king says to his servants, "Give me some food." The servant says back, "Okay." He's like, "Oh, you got it? You got me the food?" "Oh, no, I said it just like you. I memorized it." "You said, go get me some food." As he said. Later, we're going to do a small group. We're going to study what it would look like if we were to actually bring you some food. We've even memorized it in the Greek. And so, you know, it's like we had this large command, this huge task by Jesus, and we often could just quote it very, very quickly, but then we're not actually going out and doing it. Something's got to be done. We got too large of a task. There's too many people going to hell. Too many people curse. I mean, can you smell the smoke? What I mean is people are going to hell. We can see the signs everywhere. We got to do something about it. Just because we're inadequate cannot prevent us from doing this work. Our greatest fear should not be failure, but as succeeding in things in life that don't really matter. When I was in Indonesia for 3 months when I was with Matt and NACU, and I was talking to one of the Bible college professors. Actually, he was the president of the Bible college in Indonesia, and I was asking about the curriculum they do, and he said that the junior year of college, all the people that are juniors have to go to a church plant and intern at a church plant for a year. Oh, that's pretty cool. He's like, the senior year, they have to go plant the church. And if it's not successful, they fail. Like, that was their curriculum. It was like, if you're not saving souls, you're not doing your job, there's no reason for you to be in school here. Like, that was the way they saw it. I think that's a pretty awesome technique, just because they're really showing the significance of bringing Jesus to others. I mean, you know, let's give them some slack. All right, you know, there is a lot of difference between Indonesia and America. Indonesia's like 99.9% Islamic. You know, it's very prevalent that there's not any Christian influence there. So, you know, they really need to act that kind of way, right? They're going to see any change. But so do we. Is there any real indication of Christianity in America? I mean, don't we look around and see sin everywhere? I mean, it's really not very prevalent here. The need to spread the gospel is just as important in the States. It's just as important nationally, globally. Jael and I are planning on going to Africa, to Cameroon, and it's a large task. There'll be a lot of work ahead of us. There'll be a lot of things we're going to be going through, and I shared some of that with the people earlier. There's going to be lots of evangelism as well. While we're setting the Bible studies and doing everything else, they were also planning on starting schools and doing one-on-one discipleship. That's something that I've always thought was important. When I was in Illinois, I was doing a study with the atheist friend of mine, and I was trying to convert him over to Christianity. I was never able to succeed with him. It was difficult. We did lots of studies, but I just couldn't get him to come over. But the last Bible study we did together, I was talking to him, and he said to me, he said, Brian, if Christianity is such a big deal, why are you the only one of my Christian friends that seem to take it seriously? I thought that was a pretty big challenge to Christians in Germany. He said, if Christianity is such a big deal, why are you the only one that seems to take it seriously? He said, I've got lots of Christian friends, and many of them would live worse than a lot of my atheist friends. Like, how are we supposed to respond to this, right? He said one last thing. He said, Brian, I've got lots of Christian friends. Why are you the only one who has ever tried to convert me? If Christianity is such a big deal, if it's really the only way, why are you the only Christian that has ever tried to convert me? I think that's a challenge for everybody. John 14:6 says, I am the way, the truth, and the light. No one comes to the Father except through me. This is true. There's a lot of people that are not going to be able to go to Christ, not going to go to heaven because they don't know Jesus. And so we have a large task ahead of us. At the end, the only thing that matters is if us and the people we come in contact with are going to heaven. We have to purposefully decide that we're going to talk about the Bible. We have to purposefully decide we're going to evangelize. We have to purposefully do things that are going to put us in situations where we can evangelize. We have to manipulate conversations to lead to talking about God. That's not hard. Does anybody know how to manipulate conversations? Be like, there's a baseball team called the Angels. Speaking of angels, well, I mean, it's really not hard. You can really, if you just think a couple steps ahead of the conversation, you can bring almost any conversation into something about God. Something. Oh, a friend of mine really likes soccer or baseball or football or whatever, and he also believes in God. We'll talk about that. I don't know. I mean, there's ways to do it, though. There are ways. Just think ahead of time. You can make the discussion go down to God. Now, Jill and I have been very, very dedicated to doing missions. I wouldn't actually marry her until she went on a missions trip for 2 months. And so she went on a missions trip for 3 months. And she said she liked it. So I married her. So we've been married for 7 years now. She's in Illinois right now, getting ready to finish up her RN so we can do some things with that in ministry in Cameroon. The plan is to start a bunch of like home schools that can be replicated all over the place. That will be discipleship-making machines. The kids are memorizing Scripture daily. The kids are going to chapel daily. The kids are having one-on-one Bible study daily. Until we can impart our character into them, and they will become strong disciples of Christ that could then do the same thing all throughout Africa. So that's the game plan. I would love to talk to you more about it later. We have a large task. We're moving to Boya, which is about 60 miles from Nigeria, 10 miles from the coast. They claim to be about 50% Christian, but in reality, there's a lot less because there's a lot of witchcraft and idol worship also very mingled in there. We have a large task. Have you guys heard of Dasarath Manji? Who's heard of Dasarath Manji? You guys all know your kids that? Dasarath. Dasarath Manji lived in a village in northeast India. His occupation was he was a farmer. His wife, Fungani, was on her way to bring him some water. Isn't that nice? The wife's going to bring her farmer husband some water. On her way to bring him some water, she injures herself on rough terrain and ends up damaging her leg pretty bad. Now, the nearest medical facility is 41 miles away. And so it's through very difficult to navigate and dangerous terrain. And so she ended up dying because she couldn't get the medical attention she needed. And Dasarath made a decision that day. The decision was that he was going to find a way to bring the medical facility closer. And so what he did is he started to dig and spent 22 years digging a path through the hills that separated their village from the medical facility. He dug a tunnel or a path 360 feet, single-handedly with a shovel and a hammer chisel. He cut the distance of the medical facility from 41 miles to less than a mile by digging us through this path. And literally bringing physical salvation to the whole village, making it easier for them to get food and everything. It took them 22 years to do. 22 years. And the whole time he's being insulted. He's being told he's inadequate. He's not capable. He's not able. Pastor, there's no way you can do this. This task is too large for you. There's no way you can do it. In 22 years, single-handedly, he finally gets it accomplished and literally makes life easier for everybody, saving thousands of people. And here's why I say this. How long would it have taken if one other person would have joined him? How long would it have taken if 5, if 10? What if 20 people joined him? They would have knocked it down to like a couple of years, right, instead of 22? Maybe even 8. What if the entire village would have jumped on board of him? They would have all, put in the work together. They might have knocked it out in a week. Jail and I are doing a lot. What we're doing is we have a large task ahead of us going to Cameroon. We have a lot of work ahead of us. And it's going to be impossible for us to do by ourselves. Much larger than even what Dashtrat had to do. We need lots of support. I please ask if you guys would consider supporting us. At the very, very least, please consider praying for his neighbor. Thank you. Let's pray. God, my Father, I thank you for the opportunity to come here and present your word to the saints here in Eastern Plains. I thank you, my God, for your word, that we can find truth, that we can find salvation in it. I thank you, my God, for sending your Son, Jesus Christ, to be our Redeemer. And I thank you, my God, for using inadequate people to do your will. I ask that we can be willing to take the steps we need to take to be more evangelistic, to be more soul-seeking. We thank you for the sacrifice. We ask that we can live some sort of life that will show some value for what you've done to us. We pray all this in the name